Greetings, Dave Dickinson here from AstroGuys.com, and I thought I would talk a little bit about something that's been on the front of my brain this week, and you might have seen. The last few weeks we've been doing the astronomical events that are going on in 2016. This week we'd like to do, also we wrote for Universe Today, what space news that's going on, launches to watch for, science news to watch for, things we might think might be discovered. Oh cool, we got some people joining already. Everybody's off today, so hopefully people can watch. Launches that are going to go on, things that are going to arrive at different planets, and just what I'm thinking looking ahead in my crystal ball as far as what's going to occur in 2016. Now, we can always have things like, say, the Chelyabinsk meteor that nobody predicted. There's going to be those things that we know are going to happen, and there's those space news stories that are just going to come out of nowhere. Hopefully we won't have a big asteroid extinction event or anything like that. But anyway, on a more positive note for 2016, one of the big things we're watching for is the arrival of the Juno spacecraft at Jupiter. This will only be the second spacecraft to orbit Jupiter, and this is going to occur on July 4th. And this was launched back in 2011. You might remember about a year or so ago, Juno did a gravity assist by Earth. And Juno is going to be one of the first spacecraft in the outer solar system to not use an RTG. It's going to be using solar panels, and it has 3 big bus-sized solar panels to power it. It does not have a nuclear RTG. So it's going to be an interesting thing when it enters orbit around Jupiter and begins science observations. Another big thing, and I noticed I was looking at my space stories too. This one we've been chasing a few years now, but I think in 2016 this may actually happen. The detection of gravitational waves. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that we're going to get the announcement that direct detection of gravitational waves is going to actually occur in 2016. And the reason I say this is because the Advanced LIGO project, which is looking for gravitational waves, which is composed of 2 interferometers, one based in Louisiana and one based in Washington State, that just went online, and they're actually doing science observations, and they're actually gathering information right now. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we're going to get, I think it's going to be on the order of the discovery of the Higgs boson, because this is going to give us a whole new window on astronomy and space if we can actually start doing gravitational wave astronomy. The LISA Pathfinder just launched, and I think gravitational wave astronomy is the next big upcoming thing. I think in 2016 we're going to get that first big detection. Also coming up, there are a lot of heavy rockets that are going to be taking flight in the next few years. And the very first one, SpaceX is going to finally launch their Falcon Heavy. The launch date is somewhere in April right now. And that's going to be from Cape Canaveral. And China also wants to launch and get in the game too with their Long March 5. They've been talking about, by the end of this year, launching a heavy lift rocket. NASA's been building the SLS rocket, and that's a little further down the road. Maybe, I think it's 2017, the end of 2017. They want to do their first Orion uncrewed test with the SLS rocket, and we're going to see crewed flights in 2021, 2022. Incidentally, NASA got their budget kicked up a little bit in 2016. I just wrote about this for Sky and Telescope. So that's good news for SLS, Orion, International Space Station, operations, SpaceX, all these contractors that are out there, planetary sciences, all these missions like the Europa lander they want to do in the 2020s, and the Europa orbiter. That's all good news that they're going to actually get these things out there, that the budget was actually more than they asked for. I mean, how often does that ever happen, that NASA actually gets more money than not an amazing amount more, but over what they requested. They requested, I believe it was in the 18 billions for the FY 2016 budget, and they got 19.3. They got about a little over $1 billion more than they asked for. So that's kind of cool. So that's good for 2016. Also, and I think it's going to be kind of nifty, the Dream Chaser is going to finally launch. This is a small mini shuttle that's going to launch on top of an Atlas V, and it's going to land like an aircraft. And eventually, I believe this first launch is going to be automated. Eventually, this is going to be a crewed spacecraft, and it's going to be able to go up into low Earth orbit. They're looking at launching the Dream Chaser on November 1st of 2016, toward the end. But I think this is probably going to be one of those stories we're not really looking at because it's still almost a year away. But I think it's going to be really nifty if they get that up and going and get that launched. Next, We have a Mars opposition we talked about last week with observational astronomy. And right around a few months before opposition is usually your best time to launch a spacecraft to Mars. And there were 2 spacecraft that were going to make the trip. Usually that's about the average we get. However, NASA's InSight mission, it was running into technical problems, and they are now delayed to the 2018 window. However, that leaves one mission going to Mars next year during this opposition is the European Space Agency's ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter. And that's even going to have a technology demonstrator lander on it as well. That'll be launching this coming spring. And it's going to be interesting because Roscosmos is designing this Schiaparelli is the name of the lander. And it's more of a technology demonstrator because they need to work out some kinks before they send their own rover, the ExoMars rover, in 2018. So this is going to demonstrate they can do re-entry, landing, all these things that they need to do. But if it's successful, it may operate for a few weeks on the surface. This is successful. This will be Russia's first landing attempt, and I researched this. Russia, if you include the attempts with Phobos Grunt in missions to the moons of Mars, they've tried to land either on Mars or on the moons of Mars 7 times, and they've never succeeded. As a matter of fact, no one succeeded except the United States. We actually have a pretty good record because only the Mars Polar Lander is the only failure we've had. ESA, Russia, everyone that's tried to land on Mars has never succeeded. So that's going to be interesting. Also, Rosetta is going to be wrapping up operations. The European Space Agency's Rosetta mission is going to be, they don't like to say crash landing on Comet 67 PCG. They like to say they're going to try to do a very slow, bring it in as slow as possible, and they're probably not going to get any observations once they hit the comet, but they're probably going to get some, because they won't be able to steer and orient the antenna anymore. But they'll probably get some good images right up to the very last moment when Rosetta is going to end its final mission next year. September 30th, 2016, as a matter of fact. Cassini is going to have its last full year at Saturn in 2016 before they end its operations and re-enter into the atmosphere of Saturn in 2017. Exoplanets. Kind of interesting to wonder how many exoplanets might... exoplanet count has gone to 2041 right now, and they're still sifting through a lot of the Kepler data as far as trying to approve and classify new exoplanets. I'm going to make a prediction that by 2020, probably not next year because they haven't launched TESS yet, which is the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, but I'm going to make a prediction that by 2020 we're going to be up to 10,000 exoplanets, that the catalog is going to grow that big. Something that was kind of cool this year that happened that's going to be getting underway in 2016, the Breakthrough Listen Initiative for SETI, for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, got a huge financial boost from the Breakthrough, it was called the, hang on, looking at it, through Yuri Miller's Breakthrough Initiatives. So that's getting underway next year. So that's kind of cool as far as ground-based observations. Oh, the Iridium next generation of satellites is also going to launch too. And this was something that we predicted this year. But of course, with launches, budgets get cut, things get bounced back, technical problems and glitches arise. So the Iridium next constellation is going to begin launching in April 2016. And they're going to launch this on top of a Dnipro rocket from Dombrovsky Air Base in Russia. They're going to start launching. This is the next constellation of communication satellites for Iridium. And they're going to start slowly deorbiting the 66 Iridium satellites that are currently up there. Unfortunately, I did some research into this when I wrote an article for for Universe Today last year. The new constellation of Iridium satellites probably isn't going to flare the way that the older constellation will. So bad news for backyard amateur satellite spotters, but there you go. It's going to be interesting to see the transition over to the new constellation. Also, the International Space Station is still, the reason I included it, Scott Kelly's ending up his year in space mission. He's going to be breaking several U.S. space flight records he already has as far as duration and astronaut with the longest time in space and things like that. And the ISS, I remember back when they finished construction in 2009, they said, well, it's going to be good up till 2016. So it's 2016 in less than 24 hours right now. That means that the ISS is now kind of in its semi-extended life. I think they're going to keep it going past 2020 at least. So it's kind of interesting to think that it's been going on that long. Also, Cyrus Rex toward the end of the year. NASA mission that's going to be an asteroid sample return mission. This is going to be kind of a long extended mission. Launches at the very end of the year. It's going to visit the asteroid. It's got a phone number designation at the front of it. I know it's Bennu. It's something Bennu is the number. Here it is. 101955 Bennu in 2018, and it's going to be back with a sample return in the Earth vicinity around September 2019. So it's going to be going off at the very end of the year, September 2016. It's going to be another one to watch, another mission. We may see another light sail mission this year too, from Planetary Society. This has been a very beleaguered project of theirs over the last decade or so. They launched Cosmos 1, which failed from a sub-launched ICBM from Russia, failed to achieve orbit. They launched the other light sail demonstrator for low Earth orbit last year. That was a smaller prototype. They did actually manage to get it to deploy and operate for a week or two and get intermittent signals from it. This one is going to be going on top of, remember that Delta Heavy launch that we talked about, or not Delta Heavy, Falcon Heavy launch we talked about by SpaceX. This is one of the satellites they're going to be deploying on that. So that's going to be an interesting one. This is going to be a larger light sail, full-fledged size demonstrator. This is going to be going up into a 500-mile orbit. So that's going to be kind of nifty to watch. And finally, that's about it for what we're watching. That's I believe it was 13 items we listed there. One more thing, and we calculated this or so about a year ago, and it's kind of a semi-depressing milestone, but we are entering in by the end of 2016 to a longer gap time-wise between crewed spaceflight from U.S. soil than we had between the end of the Apollo program and the shuttle program. We can break that down. The Apollo program ended with the Apollo Test Soyuz project in 1976. And STS-1, the first flight of Shuttle Columbia, wasn't until 1981. So that was about a 5-year span. So the last shuttle launch, the final shuttle launch of the Space Shuttle program, STS-135, was in the summer of 2011. So we're going to hit the end of that 5-year span, equal to that 5-year span here. I believe it's by the end of 2016. I actually tabulated it out by days, November, December. So we're still flying astronauts into space, of course, but we're using the Russians to do it right now. So there hasn't been a launch off U.S. soil for 5 years, and that date's probably going to come to pass because the closest prediction for any kind of launch is SpaceX with their Dragon capsule, and they're saying now it's not till the end of 2017 that's going to occur. But, other than that, there's a lot of good things to look forward to in space in 2016 too. So this will be the last Periscope. There's no weekly space hangout this week. We'll be doing the pre-Periscopes. If we can join the weekly space hangout, we're mobile, but we'll probably be in the same location next Friday. So thanks for the final followers to hang on watching this. So I will see you in 2016.